It was a creed written into the founding documents that declared the destiny of a nation. Yes, we can. It was whispered by slaves and abolitionists as they blazed the trail toward freedom. Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
It was sung.
It was sung by immigrants as they struck out the distant shores, pioneers who pushed westward against unforgiving wilderness. Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
It was the call of workers organized, women who reached for the ballots. A president who chose the moon as our new frontier.
On the Boston Red Network and from WBRN Radio in Boston, the Monday morning quarterback on the 18th of September 2016. I have an interesting study here. We'll get to it in a minute. First, we'll go to St. Louis, Missouri. This is the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. More than 80 people were arrested in downtown St. Louis as the demonstrations continue there in the murder case of Mr. Smith. It marked the third night of what they call violence here since the acquittal of this guy Jason Stockley, charged with the murder of Mr. Smith. The mayor had a news conference. She didn't take any questions. And the interim police chief, Lawrence O'Toole, for the third day in a row, the days have been calm and the nights have been destructive. That is from Mayor Kirshen, I suppose. This is unacceptable. Destruction will not be tolerated. So they say. O'Toole said the criminals set out to break and destroy property, and as a result they landed in jail. Everybody has their analysis, I suppose. Anyway, police claim they recovered 5 weapons during the arrest. The mayor, they didn't take any questions. Early in the night, about 1,000 people gathered outside before nightfall, outside the police station that's in downtown St. Louis, marched into Midtown before circling back to 19th and Olive Streets. That's where the police have their headquarters. The demonstration started peacefully, but by 8 p.m. a small group had marched downtown, breaking windows. They weren't part of the demonstration at the Marriott Hotel, according to this. A sushi restaurant, a nail salon, an optical shop were amongst those hit. Officers, many of them armed in riot gear, forced dozens of protesters into the intersection there. Moved back. Evidently, this is brought on as it typically is when the police corner protesters and force them back. Protesters react. Amongst those caught up in the sweep was a Post-Dispatch reporter, Mike Falk, who had been covering the protests and its aftermath. Was also taken into custody was John Ziegler, who goes by the name of Revolutionary Z, had been live streaming the protest. So in other words, they were taking everyone. A bicycle police officer, suffered an injury. I guess he ran over a banana peel. Anyway, police said several county officers had some unknown chemical thrown at them. The police lined in riot gear stood across the street facing the protesters. The militarization of the police car crash. There was a car crash about 10 p.m. at Olive and 7th. It was immediately clear this was connected to anything downtown. Vandalism began about 90 minutes after the leader of the protest said the group had met its objective, bringing a large and diverse group out to peacefully assemble. We met our goal. We are dispensing. That was from Pastor Doug Hollis. That was about 6:30. This is a peaceful demonstration. Many of the protesters remained in the area as night fell, I guess. Yeah, and anyway, nonetheless, police officers said it stopped a car near the police station, arrested the driver for assault and the passenger for making terroristic threats. A third person had thrown a rock at a police officer and put an unmarked police car. He was arrested. Oh, okay. Anyway. Crowd started moving in a threatening manner towards the Impala, I guess, and the road closure. The car could not go forward, the police said in a statement, whatever. And there was early a die-in outside. This was the police headquarters there. So in other words, a myriad of activities going on. Annie Smith was amongst the protesters on Sunday. She was the mother of Mr. Anthony Lamar Smith, and a state representative also there. So in other words, the protests continue in the city of St. Louis. And as an addendum to this, the Department of Justice will not prosecute this case. Now, this was decided a long time ago, concluded a year ago, that there was insufficient evidence under the current statute to pursue a civil rights prosecution of the officer involved in this. The Department of Justice withheld the notification until the conclusion of the case, it said. And the United States Attorney's Office declined prosecution of this matter. That was in November of 2012, notified the Smith family of their decision at the time. The Department of Justice spokesman said in a statement issued to the newspaper, the Civil Rights Division concluded its own internal review and analysis in September of 2016, agreed the evidence did not support a prosecution under a federal criminal civil rights statute consistent with the precedent. The department made no formal statement at the time. So, in other words, that was the end of the case, as in many of these types of case. The former police chief, now this is in 2011, Eisen asked for the investigation, and the former District U.S. Attorney Callahan said his office and the FBI concluded this investigation without bringing charges in 2012. But Callahan said he forwarded the case to the Civil Rights Division. Now, that was the criminal division, did not charge anyone in this issue. And this is one of the reasons that many people have called for rewriting of that statute. The statute is a 2-week for what is happening basically today. Let me just clear up one other item, I believe, while we're still here. This is, let's just have it along. Wait a minute here. I don't know if we have. I thought we did, but I think we. Wait a minute here. This is on middle class incomes, and I'm not certain we do, but the title is from the Washington Post, The Middle Class Rocks. You can find more of this on Numbers Man for this week on many of these outlets, This Week in Economics. Anyway, nonetheless, this is from the Census Bureau, Income and Poverty. We have it posted there. The news is good. Medium household income, the most recent one, rose to $59,000. The 2-year increase was 8.5%. Meanwhile, 2.5 million fewer Americans were living below the poverty line. Now, the poverty line is ridiculous. For a family of 4, it's $24,000. The rate fell from 13.5% as in 2015 to 12.7% last year, 2016. So there had been some type of shift here, and the report, we have it over there, and I'll put it over here. But nonetheless, that's basically If we look at medium income, $51,000 for year-round full-time worker in this is 1975, compared with the figure of 51,766. Not much, basically. All dollars are adjusted for inflation expressed in 2017 figures, 16 figures, excuse me. So in other words, you can see right away what's going on here. There hasn't been an advancement in wages if we look at it that way. But if we further look at it here, it takes, let me see here. The threshold about a quarter, 27.7% to be exact, in 2016, up from 19.4% in 1990. Now, if you take the $100,000 threshold of being upper middle class in the share of households above the threshold was, and this is where the 27%. For African American households experienced rising incomes that boosted their income into the upper middle class at lower levels. In 2016, 1 in 7 African American households, 14.9%, had incomes exceeding $100,000. They were very lucky, as opposed to 1 in 12, 8.6% in 1990. What's that? 27 years ago. Some progress, I suppose you'd say there. 1 in 7 now. It's 1 in 7, and 1 in 7, and it used to be. Get this right in a minute here. From 1 in 12. So progress in 20-something years there. No doubt. The number of people below the government's poverty level rose from 33.6 million to 40.6 million. That's a gain of 7 million over the same year. Latino poverty increased from 6 to 11.1 million, a gain of 5.1 million there. 73% of the total 7 million boost. So this is from 1990 to 2016. Of course, a mixed measure here. Very mixed indeed is where this all ended up here. So in other words, you start looking at we'll put income and poverty here. 2016 big study here. I guess they don't have an executive study, but it's the exec upon anyway. Census Bureau, of course, collected the data, and the current population survey. Anyway, very, very long survey here. We'll just have to put this particular one up. Now, let's go to this demographic study. I thought it was very interesting. Thanks to Professor Burnett for putting this up on his Facebook page. He's always here. Now, here we go. Now, this explains dynamics of what is going on. Ron Brownstein here, the political analyst, pundit, etc. America's racial generation gap is starting to shrink, according to him, and with it, the existing tension between older Europeans and diverse young people will begin to ease. Not right away, though, however, but let me see. The milestone of DJ Trump's polarizing presidency has proved few reasons for optimism about any aspect of race relations in America, from Charlottesville to the repeal of a deferred action program, that is the DREAM Act, to the battle in policing. Now, this is what tied into our St. Louis story: Black Lives Matter, vote ID laws, of wall on the border, etc. But demographic trends often guide a reason for hope that the U.S. is living through peak years of discord over its growing racial and ethnic diversity, even if the temperature isn't likely to lower very quickly. The silver, the good news, is embedded in otherwise sobering new study from Policy Link and the Program for the Environmental and Regional Equity at the University of Southern California. The study tracks the trajectory and implications of the twin demographic revolution making American society. Remaking, get it right in a minute here. The country today is simultaneously diversifying, especially amongst young people, and aging, while kids of color are expected to become a majority of the underage population by 2020. That's about 2020. That is roughly 3 years, and already constitute most in public schools. The contrast and conflict between the kaleidoscopically diverse young generation and the prepondently European older one, the group I call the brown and gray, has emerged as one of the central fault lines in American life, thus hurt by disappointing turnout. Incidentally, we started reading Hillary the Monster Clinton's book. Clinton's last year won overwhelming majorities of young minority voters. Trump, meanwhile, carried 3/5 of older European voters, 45 and older, thus provided a majority of his votes. The new study quantifies another aspect of what is called the racial generation gap, a concept initially developed by demographer William Fry, analyzing state spending trends. They found that since 1990, states and counties with the biggest gap between mostly European seniors and mostly non-European kids tend to spend less on K through 12 public education per capita basis. There's some policy link there. They found similar data. Most states with the widest racial generation gap spent the least per public school education. List include Arizona, Nevada, New Mexico, Texas, California. A little surprised there. Florida, not surprised. Conversely, many states that are more racially homogeneous, Bernie Sanders, Vermont, Connecticut, New Hampshire, to West Virginia, Wyoming, and North Dakota, spent more. As the authors note, the resistance by many older Europeans to invest in future generations, extraordinarily short-sighted, no doubt about that. And also, a lot of this appeared in two-tier union contracts that were forced on workers, and workers went along with it. For younger workers, got less than the ones that are there. America, that is increasingly a non-European workforce, will be paying the Social Security taxes and Medicare taxes for a growing mostly European retirement population. Older European Americans need more than a diverse younger generation to obtain the skills to reach the middle class. Not on the grounds of fairness and equality, but on self-interest. As written before, there's no financial security for the gray without economic opportunity for the brown. There's no doubt about that. But again, and when you start talking about a person that's, say, 65 or 60, 20 years there, things will start to change. Nonetheless, from DJ Trump, has implicitly mobilized this coalition centered on older and working class types. We talked about working class. We didn't. We'll get that on the way out of here. That number of people during the Depression, we did that in numbers, man, and we're going back to back tonight. But we did talk about the working class when during the Depression more people moved from the middle to the working class. Now they're back to the working class again because they're employed. Not only does this agenda on crime, his agenda on crime, immigration, precisely targets European anxiety, but it also tilts towards the gray in his budget proposals, He would hold harmless Social Security, but not necessarily his Republican buddies, and a Medicare, which benefits mostly European seniors, while slashing domestic discretionary programs that invest in the productivity of the highly diversified rising generation. That's according to Matthew Pastor, director of the study there. Yeah, let's go on. One possible political consequence is that Europeans recede to less than half of the population, or more. They will respond to Trump-like appeals to racial nationalism. Pasteur noted that California state at the forward edge of demographic change experienced great, and remember this, racial tension, with initiatives like the ban on affirmative action, bilingual education services for undocumented workers. That peaked in the mid-90s out in California, where a lot of the seniors have moved away or died. Finish this up, Pastor says similar scenarios may unfold nationally as diversity extends up the generation ladder. That will happen much faster than we'd think. You look 5 to 10 years out there, things are starting to shift, and also as these voting blocks shift. Unfortunately, in the 2016 election, there just was not much out there for many young people to vote for. So when Brownstein said, well, what Hillary Monster Clinton did or didn't do, we'll be reviewing her book, incidentally, What Happened. And it's an interesting book from, as she describes herself, the Methodist. Well, anyway, we'll get later to that. The task is to speed up the process of intergenerational understanding and interdependence. Well, you will see some of that happening, no doubt about it, as we move along. Now, this is bridging the racial generation gap is key to the future. This is Policy Link. Here, we talked about the summary is America is in the middle of 2 dynamic demographic shifts. Rising diversity with the highest degree of diversity amongst our young and rapidly aging of the baby boomers, of which I'm one, while the Census Bureau projects that that America will become a majority people of color population by 2044. Well, these projections are a little even, a little odd. It could become before that. That's what, roughly, well, no, not exactly. We're 3 years out from 20, so yeah, 20, about 27 years. Yeah, most of us won't be around then anyway. Meanwhile, the senior population is set to double over the next 20 years. By 2033, seniors will outnumber the youth for the first time in history. Well, that'll be very interesting, what kind of policies you have at that time with that many seniors. I mean, it'll be a hellacious burden there, and what will happen to the country as we move into that, because again, if you're going to have that many seniors out there, and you'll have Medicare and various other government programs, especially health care, those things will have to be single payer, because the simple reason you just have so many people there, and the youth will still be working, and the senior population probably be working till 80. So that is basically where that is. So let me just jump back here now and check our time and see where we are. I think, this is Heather Long's in the, this is on incomes. It's not, in a little fact here, the economy, this is in the first 7 months of DJ Trump added 25,000 fewer jobs. Well, that's to be expected, but again, the current economic scenario is basically what was left by Barack Obama. Most of those jobs are added within the first 3 months of the present regime, and that was a spillover from Barack Obama. Now you're getting into a little different situation. We'll start seeing the redundancies or unemployment from the Hurricane Harvey and also Irma, and those displacements will start appearing. So we will look at that and see where we are. And as we talked about over in on Numbers Man, credit card delinquencies are rising a bit. And this is somebody here named Wes. I'm really struggling, he said, who was forced to move back with his parents. Went to a temp in Phoenix, landed a job that paid $18 an hour. It did not last, but the recruiter called again and moved him to a job now at some bank, monitoring car loans and repossession job, paid $16 an hour with ample opportunity for overtime. Oh well. So you're seeing some of those kinds of opportunities open up around the ball, around. So we've got those things going on. Let me just move now to I'll start the sports beat here. This is from the St. Louis Dispatch, a game we tuned into. Cubs complete sweep of Cards, send rivals reeling from the division race. Well, no doubt about that. The Cubs were working on the Nationals, lost tonight, and the Nationals won. It took a crowded plate, a replay, to efficiently shove the Cards out of the divisional race. Anyway, Mr. Rizzo here, that was a shirt sleeve tap, basically on a Rizzo there, took more than put in momentum, but took 4 more Cubs, including 1 more Cardinal reliever, and turned a game that was a must-win into just a loss. No doubt about that. So, in other words, it was a 4-3 victory, sent the Cubs to a 4-3 victory. Sunday, that broke a tie. So, other words, wait a minute here. Should be Saturday, should. 3-game sweep of the Cardinals. So, that was it. There are only 4 games remaining against their rivals. They'll need help for second-place Brewers, who would only be helping themselves at this point, adding to lead over the Cardinals, a route to November. So, this is where Rizzo was hit by lefty Tyler Lyons there. Wait a minute. Yeah. By his pitch on his sleeve. An interesting situation there. Walks. The Cards are off on Monday, and then they will continue in the race. Now, make sure I'm getting the right stuff here. 7 hours ago, according to this. This is Saturday night. I'm not sure why that timeline was there, but that is what we have from St. Louis. Now let's do the current numbers for Major League Baseball. Incidentally, we don't cover the NFL anymore because of the boycott, but the quarterback for the Patriots stated that Colin Kaepernick should have a chance to redeem himself, supposedly, as he called it, Mr. Brady. So we'll see where all this ends up with the boycott there and the dismal quarterbacks that they have this season, that many of the so-called quarterbacks, second stringers they brought out are just dismal, all we can say. Nonetheless, the Orioles were in New York with the Yankees, the Orioles 6-4. The Royals were in Cleveland 3-2. The White Sox were in the Motor City and were shut out by the Tigers, 12-zip in that one. And let's see, we have to wait just a second here. The Pirates were in Cincy. 5-2 Reds over the Pirates. The Red Sox were in Florida. Rays 3-2. They're playing ball again in Tampa. The Mets were in Atlanta. Mets 5-1. The Athletics were in Pittsburgh. Were in Philadelphia. Athletics 6-3 over the Phillies. And Toronto was in the Twin Cities. Twins 13-7 in that game. The Mariners were in Houston. Astros 7-1. The Brewers were in Florida. Brewers 10-3. So the Cards have nowhere to go. And the Cards were again in Wrigley Field. This time the score was 4-3. I think it's the same one we were talking. Yeah, Tyler Lyons was the loser there. So it was Sunday. I was thinking of a different team. Anyway, who was I thinking of with the Nationals? The Pirates and the Rockies out in Denver. Padres and Rockies at 4-3. The Rangers and Angels in California. Rangers 4-2. The D-backs and Giants in San Francisco. Giants finally win the game 7-2. Now, this is a game we were thinking about and why we got things totally confused. The Dodgers are in D.C. and they're on their way to Philadelphia. Stripling was a loser. Steinberg was the winner there. Anyway, the score was 7-1 for the Nationals. Let's just get the standings here. We usually do this on the Monday Morning Quarterback. Incidentally, when we're finished up here, we will go to John McCain was on Face the Nation and the panel as we have time. It's a short, I think, about 12-minute discussion there. Nonetheless, in the American League East, Boston's on top of the Yankees of 3 back. In the American League Central, Cleveland has clinched, and then the Twins are 14 back. The Royals 14.5 back. The Royals are 19.5 back. Houston's also clinched. I believe the next is clinched. And the Angels are 15 games back there. In the National League East, the Nationals are there, and then the Marlins, of course, they're 21 games back. In the Central, the Cubbies are on top. Then there comes the Brewers, and the Cardinals have dropped to 6 back. They're pretty much out of it. And in the West of the National League, the Dodgers are still on top, 9.5 games back is Arizona. And let me just make sure we got the Z right. They've clinched a divisional playoff berth, actually, is what the Dodgers have done. And if they have an X by their name, they've clinched the division. So we have an X. The Nationals have clinched their division. Houston has clinched their division. Cleveland has clinched their division. And that is where the standings are today. We still have roughly 2 more weeks to play baseball in the regular season. And then we'll go on to the playoffs. Oops. Oh, wait a minute here. Interesting. I'm looking here at playoff schedule where we don't. Well, I guess I can give you the dates and when they will be. They've figured this out already, that the wild cards will be on October the 3rd. That'll be the American League wild card, and on October 4th, the National League wild cards there. And then we'll have the divisional series, and they start on October the 5th through October the 11th. with these divisional series, and I guess let's see, that's the American League, and then we had the National League. So October the 12th, the series of the League Championship Series will start on October 13th through 14th. I guess we'll get it right here. And the World Series is scheduled to start on the 24th of October through November the 1st, if necessary. So now you know the whole story. This will do it for us. On we go to Senator McCain, talking about a very important situation with the Democratic Republic of North of Korea, otherwise known as North Korea, and where they are going or not going. DJ Trump now calls him Rocket Man. And incidentally, before we forget it, DJ Trump, someone put it up there, has a golf club, hit a ball literally halfway around the world, and supposedly they had a caption of Hillary Clinton where she tripped going into an aeroplane when she was Secretary of State, and the ball supposedly hits her. Well, Hillary Clinton, in her book of what happened, is literally over there chipping away with golf balls, I guess out on the range in the evening, and she's firing zingers towards Trump, a barrel of them there. In fact, she has a quote in there from G.W. Bush talking about the inaugural address from DJ Trump, and he said this is S-blank weird stuff. So anyway, we'll keep this, as they say, a PG rating. Have a good week, everyone. We'll talk to you soon. Incidentally, we did Bubba Dick Gregory over the weekend here. The eulogizer was the Honorable Louis Farrakhan from Chicago. He eulogized Bubba Dick Gregory, who died a few weeks ago. He was 84 years old, and so is Minister Farrakhan. He's 84 years old, too. What a beautiful day it was. Good day.
You. Jeffrey, I want to start with you with the Secretary of State's comments on North Korea. What did you make of those?
He's walking a line, obviously. The thing that's interesting about his position is that you see that this administration still believes that the leader of North Korea is someone who could possibly be negotiated with. They still believe that China has some capability of pressuring the North Koreans. These are huge questions, and people like me who've watched this for 20 years see new administrations come in and believe that they can move this issue, and I'm a little bit surprised that they believe they can move the issue to the degree that they think. But on the other hand, they are talking in a rational, reasonable way, understanding that the military option is really not much of an option if you're in South Korea, if you're in Japan, obviously. And so he's walking a line, but I don't predict great success out of this plan.
Ramesh, it does seem difficult to kind of try and figure out. We're a few weeks away from Fire and Fury, which was President Trump's said that if North Korea threatened again, it would see fire and fury. But the Secretary of State, while saying there's a military option, is clearly still working the diplomatic, very clear at the first to say we don't want a regime change in North Korea, which is a clear signal to them. What do you make of where things are now? This is the latest iteration of a pattern, really.
Right, and I think that the Secretary of State's call for a de-escalation of rhetoric is particularly interesting in light of the President's earlier comments about fire and fury. Look, I think he's conceding that the attempts we have made to send a message that they need to calm down and stop saber rattling have not gotten through, and so it does have a little bit of a disconcerting sense of spinning of the wheels.
Just a quick point on that. He talks about the four no's, but the South Koreans, our allies, just this week, let it be known that they have a decapitation plan at the ready. In other words, a violent removal of North Korea's leadership. So the North Koreans, I'm sure, are not hearing Rex Tillerson. They're hearing about the decapitation plan.
Well, and Susan, they're going to hear from the President. They are hearing from the President in tweets and other places. What do you expect? The President goes to the General Assembly next week to speak to the world. How do you see that in this context?
And the number one issue he faces is North Korea. And today he labels the leader of North Korea Rocket Man in a tweet, which I am sure is not something that Rocket Man finds amusing, right?
It's not easily translatable.
It's
either.
not really. It's not a diplomatic.
Although he's a fan of Western music, and so Elton John could be available for anyone trying to explain what's going on.
You know, the trouble with pursuing endlessly through several administrations trying to deal with the nuclear in North Korea is that they're just closer and closer and closer to being in a really devastating position with their nuclear arsenal. So the ground on which this is being played just gets more and more dangerous. With just the same options that we've had from the start.
Jamel, let me pivot here to the president's negotiating with another group, which is, say, the Democrats this week. Where are we at the end of the week in terms of what the president may or may not have agreed to or negotiated with the Democratic leaders, and then what Republicans are doing with that news?
Well, I'm not sure that Democrats are entirely certain of what they've negotiated with the president, but so far what seems to have happened is that the president has made a commitment to do something on DACA, on Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, the Dreamers. And Democrats believe that they are on the path to some sort of permanent solution for those immigrants. And the trade here is a permanent solution for border security, for spending on what the president has labeled sort of upgrading the fences and existing walls on the border. That, I think, may happen. Republicans obviously are not happy about this, although Republican lawmakers have said that they are interested in a permanent solution. What I think is interesting about all of this is the activist response to the Democratic negotiations. This worry that to get this deal, Democrats will be bolstering a hardline immigration status quo on the border. And so there are rumblings that some activists don't want this kind of deal if that's what it takes to get a permanent solution for
the Democratic activists.
I don't know. You know, we always knew that when President Trump was elected with this different kind of coalition, that it was possible he could govern as a third-party president.
Right.
And I think that's what we've been seeing the last few weeks. And this alarms, I think, some activist Democrats. But boy, it more alarms, I think, Republicans who figured we'd accept President Trump and all the uncertainties that created if it meant we could get our priorities signed into law. And that's what it's in question now.
See, I actually kind of disagree with that, because the border wall that Trump appears to be giving up, he's not asking for that, at least as part of this deal. It's not as though Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan are enthusiastic about that. That wasn't a priority for the Republican Party establishment. That was a priority for Trump's base specifically. And I think a lot of congressional Republicans who are fine with legal status for this group of illegal immigrants who were brought here in most cases as children, that's not a problem for the congressional establishment. That's more of a problem for Trump's very distinctive base. They're the ones that he seems to be selling out.
What's so interesting about all of this is that it seems like no one is happy here. On one hand, President Trump has not been able to advance a traditional Republican agenda like I think some Republicans hoped. On the other hand, he is betraying this core base of his that hoped on immigration restrictionism.
Well, let me disagree with you. You know who's happy here? Americans who look at this and say, you know, for 16 years...
Playing the role of optimist today.
Yeah.
All right.
Americans who look at this and say, nothing gets done. 16 years they debated about Dreamers. Now, does it get done? We got through raising the debt ceiling and funding the government, at least for a couple months, with no big fight. Hurricane relief. I think this is exactly what people have been so frustrated about Washington, that nothing ever seemed to get done because no one was happy with making a deal.
So, Jeffrey, is this letting Trump be Trump?
Letting Trump be Trump allows him to tweet abnormally, let's say, and then make normal deals with people he actually likes. One of the things that's interesting, I think normal Trump, or letting Trump be Trump, is recognizing the fact that he likes Chuck Schumer more than he likes Mitch McConnell. Now, that's not a betrayal in his mind, because he doesn't care about Mitch McConnell, he doesn't care about Paul Ryan. He does care about the base. And so I think there's always a limit on how far he'll go, as long as the base becomes activated against him on the issue of the wall, which is highly symbolic. You already hear the Trump people, by the way, going back to this idea of normalcy, they're talking in a more normal way about, well, it's not really a wall, some cuts can be a fence, and some things we already have in place. Trump is being Trump in the sense that we can't predict what tomorrow will bring, and we can't predict what the next tweet will bring.
Ramesh, let me stick to policy a tiny bit here in this context, which is, all right, the president has the beginnings of a deal here, but Republicans obviously want other things. There are other pieces in play. What are they? What should people pay attention to? But also, does this mean the president now has to be the negotiator through all the complicated pieces as he works with Democrats, Republicans, with himself, his base?
Well, different Republicans want different things. Some would like a policy where it's mandatory for employers to use E-Verify to make sure that their new hires are legally resident in the United States. If the wall is gone, then there are other things that people want to look at in terms of border security. As for whether Trump is going to negotiate this, what's interesting is we use this language about negotiation and deal, but we're also unused to actual deals being made in Washington, D.C., that we haven't noticed that, in fact, the debt ceiling was not a negotiation, was not a deal. That was just Trump saying, I agree with the Democratic position.
Yes.
And so far, we have a somewhat more specific agreement between Trump and the congressional Democrats on legalizing Dreamers, and everything about the things that Trump might want from the Democrats is vague and up in the air.
Susan, how do you see this playing out for Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell, who have sometimes been on the receiving end of bad news from the president? They would have to manage a bill through here. What's this look like going forward?
Well, they'd have to agree to bring a bill forward. I mean, that is not the president may be a little fuzzy on this. It's not always clear, but Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell will determine what it gets debated in Congress, and so he needs them. He needs them to at least cooperate. But they're pretty, especially Mitch McConnell, pretty pragmatic, pretty strategic. I assume it's going to be hard for either of them to just defy the president. One other thing, it's a little bit like triangulation in the Clinton administration, where Clinton worked with the Republicans who were on the rise in Congress, and that worked until Clinton faced impeachment, and he needed to be a Democrat again. And we should never forget that this Russia investigation is proceeding. We don't know where that goes. There may be a time when President Trump really needs to be a Republican again.
There's one of the many interesting moments, a small point, but one of the many interesting moments in the last week is that it seemed as if Trump had forgotten that the Republicans control the House and the Senate. And he is post-partisan or non-partisan or whatever you want to call it, but they will remind him over time. They will remind him that they're in charge of those bodies.
And Jamel, going back to your point about the Democratic base, Jerry Connolly, Virginia Democrat, told Politico, there must be both political and moral limitations to how far they're willing to go with the president. And I was struck this week the president had kind of two positions on what happened in Charlottesville. He signed legislation condemning the white supremacists. On the other hand, he again returned to this idea there are both sides. That notion of both sides is this moral piece that Connolly is talking about.
I think that is the core dilemma right now for Democrats who find themselves in, I think, the somewhat unexpected position of being able to essentially dictate terms to President Trump and have Trump accept them. If that's the case, then why shouldn't you kind of, if you're working towards a practical goal, not take advantage of that? On the other hand, when the president is unwilling to make firm condemnations of white supremacists, when the president, until very recently, employed advisors who worked or ran websites that sort of facilitated those kinds of groups, delivering a political victory or a policy victory to the president is in some sense delivering him a political victory as well. And then you're stuck in the situation where your practical accomplishments end up bolstering someone who morally you have this profound disagreement. And so I'm not really sure how Democrats square that circle, but I think it is a real dilemma. And I think on the activist level, liberal activists, progressive activists are very wary of this turn.
Chuck Schumer is obviously comfortable making deals with Donald Trump. The base of Chuck Schumer's party, not going to be so comfortable.
Right. Ramesh, what did you make? The president met with Tim Scott. Tim Scott trying to talk to an African-American senator, Republican from South Carolina, about these issues. What was the net result of that interaction, do you think?
You know, it's not clear because it was after that meeting that the president went out again and talked about both sides. And one of the things that I think that suggests is that even though President Trump has been getting very favorable publicity for working with the Democrats, he cannot resist relitigating this previous episode where he got very, very bad press. He just has to have the last word in on that argument.
Right, and now we have violence in St. Louis, which is going to perhaps provide another flashpoint moment for this question of race in America. Thank you to all of you. We're out of time. We'll be back in a moment to take a look at how Florida is recovering from Hurricane Irma. Your reaction to the Secretary of State, the U.S. wants to sit down at the table with North Korea, but North Korea doesn't stop testing.
Well, you know, this is one of the longest-standing crises that we have faced. 3 previous administrations have tried to make deals with North Korea in order to stop this steady progress they've been making towards the acquisition of nuclear weapons and the means to deliver them. And I'm all for us going back to the table, but I'm not sure that we aren't facing a serious situation here of two options. One, a nuclear-armed North Korea, or war with North Korea, so we would prevent them from the further acquisition. So it seems to me China is very important, and yet we can't revisit that same old scenario we had before. So we're going to have to do a number of things, including incredible emphasis on missile defense in South Korea and our own missile defense system, since there is the scenario, and you never know exactly where it is, where they could strike the United States of America and Alaska. That is, both of those are unacceptable options. So I think missile defense, I think we're trying to influence China to rein in their behavior, which China has never done. This is probably one of the most serious international crises, national security crises we've faced.
Give me your assessment of the administration. Secretary Tillerson suggested today that all of this is backed up by a swift military capability. Everybody's talked about how tough those options are, but give me your sense of how soon that capability could be put into operation. I mean, other analysts have said it would take a long time for the U.S. to actually move militarily. What's your sense of the timeline?
I think it's difficult, but I think we are making sure that we have the capability as far as militarily in South Korea, but also the emphasis now has to be on missile defense to a large degree. I have great confidence in our capability to develop counter-missile capability. We don't have that right now, when some analysts are saying that they have already the capability to hit the United States of America.